Hey there, welcome to Little Fixes, a podcast for the sassy, classy and a little choosy भारतीय नारी. This is Macri. मैं और मेरे गेस्ट शेयर करते हैं सिंपल प्रैक्टिकल आइडियाज जो आप इजीली फॉलो कर सकते हैं to get closer to the kind of life you want to live. We talk about career, self-care, social media tips, parenting, relationships and so much more to help you thrive. All of this is mixed with a lot of laughter. So my lovely friend, continue what you're doing and join me in this real talk. Hello, sassy lady. So today we are back with another amazing episode on Little Fixes. और आज का एपिसोड है हमारे किड्स के लिए कि उनको फ्यूचर में किस तरीके के स्किल्स की जरूरत होगी टू be better at their jobs, maybe be better at their lives, or maybe be better at their business, whatever. Like फ्यूचर में बच्चों को क्या स्किल्स चाहिए होंगे टू सर्वाइव एंड टू थ्राइव. कि जो हमारी जनरेशन थी वहां से अब तक बहुत चेंज आ चुका है एंड वी ऑल नो दैट. हमने बहुत सारे नए तरीके के क्लासेस देख लिए हैं, नए कॉन्सेप्ट्स आ गए हैं, सारे बच्चों को कोडिंग सिखाई जा रही है. तो लेकिन ये बहुत ज्यादा कंफ्यूजिंग हो जाता है कि आखिर क्या सिखाएं अपने बच्चों को. और इससे रिलेटेड मैं कुछ एपिसोड्स कर भी चुकी हूँ, बट वी नेवर एक्चुअली फोकस्ड ऑन द एजुकेशनल साइड ऑफ इट कि एक्चुअली चाहिए क्या. तो इसलिए टुडे आई हैव इनवाइटेड अनुषा महालिंगम टू लिटिल फिक्सेस पॉडकास्ट. शी इज द को फाउंडर ऑफ लेसन लीप. तो लेसन लीप एक प्लेटफॉर्म है जहाँ पे बच्चों को जो ने नई सेंचुरी में नए टाइम के लिए आगे फ्यूचर के लिए जो स्किल्स चाहिए वो सिखाए जाते हैं. बट इट इज वेरी डिफरेंट फ्रॉम योर रेगुलर ऑनलाइन क्लासेस. तो हम जानेंगे अनुषा से कि बच्चों को कौन से स्किल्स चाहिए, हम उनको डेवलप करने में कैसे हेल्प कर सकते हैं. साथ ही ये भी जानेंगे कि लेसन लीप क्या है. बट बिफोर वी डू ऑल ऑफ दैट, let's welcome Anusha on Little Fixes. Hi Anusha, we are thrilled to have you here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So Anusha, एपिसोड शुरू करने से पहले हम ये जानना चाहेंगे कि what all you do before lesson leave, what all you did, and why did you decide to start this wonderful platform for kids?
Absolutely. So I've had quite an interesting career journey. I started life as a management consultant. So I used to work with a company called McKinsey & Company. And as a consultant, I used to, work with different companies, help them solve problems related to their strategy, operations, organization. So it was a great introduction, I think, to the corporate world and all the different types of problems or issues that, companies think about and face. And then while that was all very interesting, in 2012, a friend of mine had just started a company in the school supply space. It was an e-commerce company. And basically what we did was we helped schools and parents find things that children would need for school, right? Books, uniforms, school supplies, all of that. And so we started that company, and our clients were either schools or were parents, right? So we did that for a few years, helping schools, and then we were acquired by another company called Hopscotch, which hopefully I think people have heard of. Yes, which e-commerce, another e-commerce company, again focused at parents. You can see the kind of trend in my life, and helping them find like amazing products for their kids. 2011 is also when I became a mother for the first time. I have two girls. And so if you look at my life over the last 10 years, I think parenting has been front and center. So either, I have been a parent or I have worked to help parents figure something, right? Whether it was school supplies or clothes or so forth. So when I left Hopscotch a couple of years ago, I knew I wanted to start something that would help solve a problem for parents. And that's actually like there are so many parents, so many problems to solve for parents, right? So I was quite confident I would find something. So that was kind of one thing going through my mind. I also through my life, right, growing up, was very privileged that my parents encouraged me to do a lot of different activities, right? So life was not always about academics for me. Obviously academics was important, but as it is, I think, for any Indian parent. But outside of academics, I did Bharatnatyam, Carnatic music, debate, theater, like a whole lot of activities. And I actually attribute all the successes in my life more to all the skills I have learned via my extracurricular sort of after school education than to, getting good marks in school, right? Like I think academics was fine and it was a good foundation that I needed, but I don't think it really equipped me for the post school world. right? Where you have to go
Yeah.
and life is not straight and narrow then, right? Like you
Yeah.
have to go out and you have to apply your brain, and you have to have a lot of skills, right? You need problem solving, you need curiosity, you need teamwork, and you need, most critical in my opinion, is very strong communication skills, right? How do
Yeah.
you talk to other people? How do you communicate? How do you convince? Like that's such an important skill as you go out into the world. And so as I started thinking about what I wanted to do next, right, I knew I wanted to do something for parents to help them solve problems, around kind of the education space. I didn't want to do something very traditional in education.
Mm.
And so this was the path that we picked with Lesson Leap, right? Where we said, listen, we really want to help children
Mm.
learn all the skills that they need, so that these are all complementary to what they are taught in school, right? So school gives
Mm.
you a very good foundation and academics, but
Mm.
the thing is that if you have a class of 30 students, right, or 35 or 40, whatever it is these days that the number of kids are in a class, very hard for one teacher to be able to do academic and help with all of the other non-academic or related skills. And so
Mm.
it doesn't get focused on as much in school. So we want to be very much complementary to what children learn in school, and to help them pick up some of these what we feel are very relevant skills, a primary among which is communication. So obviously all skills are very important, but we feel like communication especially is
Mm.
something that we want to help kids get better at. So that's how kind of Lesson Leap came about.
Okay, so you and Deepthi decided that you want to equip children with great communication skills, which is the main thing behind Lesson Leap.
Yes.
Okay, so besides communication skills, you also mentioned things like problem solving. You also mentioned
Yeah.
teamwork. So, are there any other skills required? Like, जैसे क्या होता है कि पहले हम लोगों को इन सब चीजों पे बिल्कुल भी नहीं बोला जाता था कि ये करो, लाइक एटलीस्ट नॉट इन माय स्कूल एंड नॉट
Yeah.
इन माय सोसाइटी वेयर आई ग्रू अप. यहाँ पे ये नहीं होता था कि
Yeah.
स्पेशली आपको कोई अलग से प्रोजेक्ट दिया जा रहा है कि वर्क ऑन इट, वर्क ऑन दैट. नहीं, पढ़ लिया आपने, बहुत अच्छे मार्क्स आ गए, बहुत है. लाइक एवरीबडी यूज्ड टू फोकस ऑन दैट. और अगर कोई उसमें अच्छा नहीं कर पाता था तो होता था कि दिस किड इज नॉट गोना मेक इट. सो
Yeah.
but now the things have changed, or maybe they are changing, because
Yeah.
obviously it will take a lot of time to get there,
Yeah.
because even our education system is not exactly there, like you also
Yeah.
mentioned. So
Yeah.
what can be some other skills that our kids will need growing up?
Yeah, so I mean, communication obviously is a big one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I feel very strongly about, because I think that as you go into the outside world, right? Like when you're small, you're with your family, then you're with your school. It's still a pretty closed like bubble, right? So you kind of grow up in a sheltered space, and then you go out into the outside world and you realize there are so many different types of people, right? Who come from
Mm-hmm.
so many different backgrounds. To be able to work with all of these people and to be able to be successful, you have to learn, you have to understand, right, where, like, a lot of empathy, right? Like that's something that you need to be able to
Yeah,
understand where
true.
people come from. Lots of curiosity, right? You go
Mm-hmm.
into a new job or a college or whatever it is that you do, and you find that, okay, you have to be curious, right? You have to try and understand everything that is out there, so that you can use it. Creativity, problem solving, right? Those kind of
Mm-hmm.
skills as well, because nothing is like school, right? It's not like, they say, what is 8 apples plus 9 oranges, right? When you go out into the outside world, it's not simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
School is very structured. The outside world is chaotic and unstructured. And so you need to be able to take every problem, break it down, and then be able to solve it, right? So that you can
Mm-hmm.
keep moving ahead with everything that you need to do. And we believe also very strongly in kind of global citizenship, right? Like the world
Right.
is becoming so small. You need to be able to interact with so many different kinds of people. So to be able to um, understand where people are coming from, to be able to work closely together, those are, we think, very relevant skills. And most of us learn them on the job, right? You go into your
Yeah.
first job, and that's when you start learning about, okay, how do I do this differently? How do I deal with different people? And we want to make sure that we equip you much before, right? So that you're not going out there into the real world and suddenly realizing life is much more than just academics.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if we talk about problem solving, or
Yeah.
how can we develop that skill in our kids? Problem solving एक बहुत बड़ा टर्म है, और
Correct.
अगर हम किसी से नॉर्मली इफ वी मेंशन दिस टर्म तो इमीडिएटली दिमाग में पहले ये आता है कि शायद मैथ्स की प्रॉब्लम की बात कर रहे होंगे. तो तो प्रॉब्लम
Correct.
सॉल्विंग एग्जैक्टली मतलब हाउ डज इट प्ले आउट, एंड हाउ कैन वी मेक किड्स मोर एफिशिएंट एट इट?
Yeah, very interesting question, right? And I think here's the thing with problems. It could be any problem, right? It doesn't, I mean, obviously, it doesn't have to be just a math problem or a science problem, but it's something where with little kids, right? I think even building puzzles is about problem solving, right? Because the children are looking at these different pieces and trying to figure out how to put them together, right? I think even toys like Lego blocks, things like that, right, where the kids are trying to build different shapes, build different items, all of that, you're solving problems in your mind, right? You're saying, okay, how do I put two pieces together so that they form a certain shape? So it's not necessarily just, something that you do in maths, but I think it's something where we have to give our children little bit more room to play, right? If we in schools, especially in India, I think it's very structured, right? There is
Yeah.
only one way to get to the answer. I have lost count of the number of times when I was younger where I might get to the right answer, but the teacher will reduce marks for steps, right? They'll say you used not the steps you're
Yeah.
supposed to use, right? I may have thought of the answer differently. It's a very Indian thing, right? Like
Yeah.
I can see that you relate to that as well. But that's not the point, right? The point is not that you have to get to the answer only by following a certain series of steps. Thinking out of the box, right? And saying, okay, if this is the problem that I have to solve, what are the different ways in which I can solve the problem? How do I break down the problem into smaller parts so that I can solve it easily? And this could be a problem in anything, right? Even if I'm thinking about drawing something, right? How do I start the drawing, right? Like, how do I think about putting all of those parts together in the drawing so that it, becomes the output? So it can be in any field, I think is what I'm trying to say. And I think sort of encouraging children to not follow a very structured approach, I think, is step number one towards problem solving.
Okay, so I was reading about it, and there was one very interesting thing that they mentioned, that
Yeah.
when your kid asks you something, you can ask them कि why do you think
Yes.
it happens? Like पहले आप पता
Yeah.
करके आओ, right? तो
Correct.
rather than
Correct.
उनको सीधा सीधा आंसर देने के, we are encouraging them to explore. क्योंकि मुझे
Correct.
लगता है कि लेकिन हमारे यहाँ उल्टा होता है, या तो हम आंसर देते ही नहीं है, लाइक वी सिंपली इग्नोर देम, वी ब्रश देम ऑफ, और वी गिव अ वेरी
Correct.
सिंपल आंसर. लाइक मैं भी ऐसे ही करती हूँ, या तो मुझे लगता है कि यार कितना परेशान कर रही है मेरी बच्ची मुझे बार बार, तो
Correct.
आई विल बी लाइक कि ऐसे ऐसे होता है, या फिर आई विल सिंपली से कि मुझे नहीं पता, इवन इफ आई नो द
Correct.
आंसर, और अगर मे बी
Correct.
आई I should make an
Yeah.
effort to find the answer because she is very young. So
Yeah.
this can be a great approach, I think, right?
Absolutely right. And I think researching together is an even more, I mean, depending on the age of the child,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
the child is very small, but even when they are small, right? I think doing things together helps set them up. So if they come to you with a question, even if you know the answer, right? Even if it's a very
Yeah.
simple question to which you know the answer, I think, saying, okay, let's look at this book, or, sometimes my kids will come and ask, they are 10 and 7, so they're a bit older, but they'll come and say, who was the first person in this world? Or, how was the earth created? What was there before the earth? Questions like that. They're starting to get curious, right? And, we have encyclopedias at home. We have like a lot of books at home. And so the answer is, come, let's look at this together, right? Let's try and learn something together. So, that way they ask even more questions, right? It's usually never just one question. There's always like reasons and questions behind it. So, your suggestion of ask them why they're asking, right? Or what they think, I think is good, because then you start getting to why they're asking a certain question, right? And so you can then help them figure out the answer.
Yes, yes, certainly. And what about teamwork? Teamwork भी बोला जाता है. अभी क्या है currently
Correct.
we are all
Absolutely.
stuck at home, और ज्यादातर इतने mostly we have one kid or maybe two kids. Like
Correct.
I have just one kid. तो अभी
Correct.
how can we encourage them to teamwork? Like क्या कर सकते हैं? अभी
Absolutely.
स्कूल में तो हमें लगता है चलो टीम्स बना दी चार चार बच्चों की, या फिर दे आर प्लेइंग इन द गार्डन तो उनको टीम
Correct.
में खिला रहे हैं, बट घर पे रह के हम कैसे ये चीज एनकरेज कर सकते हैं?
Absolutely. So, I mean, it's one of the things we do at Lesson Leap, right? So, for us, it's very important that our classes are small group classes and not one-on-one, because we believe very much that it's not just a teacher-student interaction, right? You learn so much from people around you. And so, a small group that can then work together to create something, learn from each other is something that's very important. So I think there's ways to do this online right now, right? And online need not be suboptimal. I think people feel, okay, chal, we'll do something online right now, and then when life goes back to normal, hopefully they'll go and meet offline. And obviously it's very important, right? I think personal interaction is important, and I'm also dying for my children to hopefully be able to go out and meet their friends again. But I do think online offers a lot of opportunities we would otherwise miss. So you can have kids from different cities together, for example, right? We can never have that even post COVID, because everyone is busy in their different spots. And so, some of the classes we have, one child from Dubai, one child from Singapore, one child from Delhi, one child from Coimbatore. It's so interesting, right? To see that mix of children and how they think a little bit differently and how that adds to the whole class. So I think there's definitely opportunities to encourage some of this online right now, that give kids some interaction as well. which, sadly they're not able to do in person. But finding activities like these, right, I think would be great to encourage teamwork.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. And I was also reading कि इसमें आप क्या कर सकते हो, तो there were also a few other things suggested. जिसमें there was one suggestion that shoot a movie at home, like
Hmm. Yeah.
come up with a story and do things like that. So I found it very interesting, and I think you at Lesson Leap also work on
Yeah,
storytelling skills, right? So what exactly is that?
absolutely. Yeah, so we have several classes, right? But I think like this theater storytelling is something that's quite important to us.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are classes that just encourage children to, you can provide a prompt, right? So you can say, and
Mm-hmm.
the children usually come up with this, right? Like what type of characters do we want to have in the story that we're creating? What type of, where are they, right? Are they in space? Are they in, a beautiful kingdom far, far away? Whatever it is that children like, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then they start creating their or talking about the worlds that they're creating, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the story sort of comes together. I think in this vein, actually, like it's very interesting to see how we can do theater online, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's never been considered something that can be done online, and it's interesting to see how you can bring the kids together. Now even on Zoom, I discovered the other day there's something called immersive view, which actually makes it look like all of these
Mm-hmm.
disparate people are to get, you have the same background at the back, and so it looks
Oh.
like they're all together,
Mm-hmm.
right? So technology is catching up as well, right?
Yeah.
So it starts to look a little bit less chaotic, but you can definitely do things like theater and storytelling, story writing, things like that, right? Where you can
Mm-hmm.
build off of each other, right? You can say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
you give me one line of the story, I will add to that with my line of the story, and together we'll create this like really cool overall story that we're going to come up with.
वाओ, दिस इज सच अ कूल आइडिया कि एक एक लोग अलग अलग पार्ट स्टोरी का बना रहा है, तो वी विल क्रिएट समथिंग वेरी डिफरेंट एंड आई थिंक वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग ऑल्सो.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, I love this idea, and I'm definitely going to try it because my girl loves to make up stories. So yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Absolutely. I think you should do it, right? Like you say a sentence, like let
Mhm.
her add to it with her sentence, then you add to it with your third sentence. Or maybe you can get other relatives in as well, right? So three, four of
Mhm.
you can do it together. And so it's quite interesting to see how the story goes, right? Because everybody is giving something new to the mix.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned that you are very passionate about communication skills.
Yeah.
So, besides obviously these sessions, online classes, what can be some other ways to develop great communication skills in kids?
So I think reading is
Okay.
actually very
Mm-hmm.
important in my opinion, right? So I think reading multiple things, right? It obviously it helps you build your vocabulary, which is great, but also makes you very imaginative, right? Like you get
Yeah.
lost in all of these worlds. My kids are currently reading all of these Enid Blyton books or Harry Potter, and they love it, right? They want to go to boarding school because of that. But outside of that, it's very interesting to see sort of how it's quite exciting, and they really get lost, right? They can be in books for hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is actually, something in my opinion that's a very critical building block. Obviously, it's for later ages when they can read by themselves, but I think even when they are younger, if a parent reads to them,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that's important. I also think, at least in our country, it's very important that we also read to them in our vernacular languages, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm from Chennai, but we live in Bombay, so we're not around other people who are speaking Tamil all the time. And so to be able to read them some books in our language also helps keep that alive and sort of helps, right? And now, because
Mm-hmm.
obviously we're learning Hindi in school, we're trying to buy books in Hindi, right? So that the
Mm-hmm.
same way that in English vocabulary is improving, and they're able to write better sentences or think of better sentence construction and stuff in their head, like the same thing we're trying to do with Hindi as well, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
we're reading more and more fun stories and we make it fun, right? So I think that's something that's definitely like critical, and then encouraging children to speak up, right? Even at
Mm-hmm.
home, to describe different things, talk about what they're doing. And I think here, like asking them very open-ended questions is usually the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You can say like, I mean, now it's online school, so it's a little bit harder, but what happened in school during your art class today? What did you paint? Why did you paint? Things like that, right? Where then they start talking about what they did, and that helps them kind of verbalize everything that they're thinking as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's a great idea. So, as you mentioned that your kids are learning a lot of languages, like they are
Yeah.
obviously in Bombay, so they have to learn, I think, besides English,
Marathi.
Marathi,
Yeah,
they
and
have to
Hindi.
learn Hindi, and at home
Yeah.
you are Tamilian, so you are you must be teaching them Tamil also.
Yeah.
So, being multilingual is in some way helps kids, like besides obviously being able to speak different languages in some
Yeah.
is there some other way it helps?
It does. It does. So I
Mm-hmm.
think being multilingual, so there's lots of research out there, right? That proves
Mm-hmm.
that's actually very good for the brain because the brain is making so many different mind maps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of all of the different languages. And so it's definitely proven to kind of, I'm not going to say it makes you smarter, but I think it definitely gives you kind of a lot of, it supports you and it helps you in a pretty big way. And I think outside of that, your ability to be able to connect with different people also increases, right? Because you're
Mm-hmm.
able to understand, you're able to empathize a little bit more with different types of people as you're learning all of these different languages. And I think especially when you live in a country like India with so many languages around you, right?
Mm-hmm.
We should definitely make the most of it. But being multilingual, I think definitely makes you more adaptable. It helps you think in a very different manner, and it's also much easier to learn, I think, when you're younger. The older I get, the harder it is, I find, to
Mm-hmm.
remember and to learn new languages. And I find like these kids pick it up so quickly, right? So definitely a good reason to lean into it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now I just thought of one thing that
Yeah.
it is everything is global, and we are exposed
Yes.
to different cultures, whether it's through movies, it's through books, or whatever,
Yeah.
like internet. So when my daughter sees someone who looks different,
Yeah.
so she tries to look like them, or she asks me, कि ये
Yeah.
ऐसा क्यों लग रहा है, ये अलग क्यों दिख रहा है. तो
Yeah.
what can be some ways to make them sensitive about different cultures or maybe different appearances, like how people look?
Yeah. So many books out there right now. Yeah. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that we've always talked to our children about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Saying, not, I mean, there are different types of people, different types of families. Even if you think about different types of religion, there's just so many different aspects for people, right? And so we've always talked about how, like, while ultimately we're all human and, we all hopefully behave a certain way. And what's most important is what's inside and kindness and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
People might look very different. And there are a lot of books out there that help them understand that theirs is not the only way, right? Like how
Mm-hmm.
they look or how their close family looks is not the only way. And I think, reading them different types of books from different cultures, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
one thing. That, folk tales from Asia, folk tales from Europe, right? Like all
Mm-hmm.
of those, I think helps represent, buying them different dolls, right? Types of dolls. So they see
Mm-hmm.
a lot of differences. I think that's something that helps them to watching movies from different parts of the world and helping them realize that cultures and customs are different in different places, right? Which may lead to
Mm-hmm.
people sort of dressing a certain way and looking a certain way. They're all good things to expose children to from a very early age. So they understand that there's a lot of pluralism, right? If you will,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of diversity in this world, which is what
Mm-hmm.
makes it such an amazing place.
Yeah, wonderful. So now one more thing is there that it is STEM, STEM, like science,
Yes.
technology, engineering, and maths. So
Yeah.
this concept has recently been everywhere, and parents are very excited about it. कि इसमें कि बच्चों को अलग-अलग चीजें सिखा सकते हैं. I think पहले अभी इसमें A भी आ गया है, STEAM हो गया है, I think, right?
Steam.
Arts.
Correct. Correct. Arts bhi aa gaya.
या सो ये चीजें हमेशा से ही हमारे करिकुलम में रही हैं. अगर हम ब्रॉडली देखें कि साइंस भी हमने पढ़ी है,
Correct.
टेक्नोलॉजी भी पढ़ा है, इंजीनियरिंग आज सब कुछ पढ़ा
Correct.
है. तो व्हाई दिस सडन फोकस ऑन दिस एंड हाउ इज इट डिफरेंट फ्रॉम आवर ट्रेडिशनल एजुकेशन?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like in India there has been focus to some extent, but the way it has been focused, right? Because science and technology, like being an engineer, is kind of the be all and end all of our life, right? So I think, parents have traditionally looked at, and so even if you look abroad, right, a lot of people who do these STEM courses end up being, people from Asia, people from India. But I think how you do them is changing, right? So I think the focus is again getting less into rote learning and more into encouraging kind of kids to understand, okay, why do I need to solve this problem? And so therefore, how can I think about it's again goes back to my original problem solving, creativity, all of that, right? I think it's starting to, the differences in how we are approaching the problem, not specifically in that this is something that is new in our curriculums. I think schools are, and even like I think overall the education policy, everything is starting to move towards this, right? Which is to say, listen, we need to teach children why something happens, not just say, listen, this is how it happens. Now you mug it up and you go and regurgitate it in the exam, right? So I think the focus on like coding, for instance, right, which has become very popular right now, is also all about saying, listen, I want to teach children like they can build anything they want, right? It doesn't just have to be that, okay, perform steps A through Z and, you'll get the output and that is the program. It's more about saying, hey, listen, what is the problem I'm trying to solve? Now you go out and you think about creative ways in which to solve the problem, right? So I think that's where a lot of these new STEM classes or STEAM classes are also coming from, right? And art by itself lends itself to a lot of creativity itself, right? Like it's about sort of how you want to do it. But I think this overall kind of STEM/STEAM push is coming a little bit from, let me not be very restrictive and let me kind of help my children become much more creative and much more problem solving oriented rather than just kind of answer oriented.
Okay, so what are your views on these coding classes? अभी सब जगह हो गया last 1-2 years से I'm seeing कि बच्चों को बस
Yeah.
start to finish code सिखा देते हैं, तो does it really help in some way कि जो
No.
अभी चल रहा है
No.
वो सिखा दिया, वो आगे help करना क्या होगा
No,
मतलब
I
उससे?
think, I think the thing is that, again, it depends on how it is taught, right?
Mhm.
I think coding by itself is interesting. And I think that once children kind of understand the algorithmic way of solving problems, right? Where you say, okay, how do I think about this in different steps, right? So, my child, does programming. We don't do any classes. She just does it on her own. We use the Scratch, MIT Scratch kind of programming language, which is available for everybody, even code.org, right? It's all available for
Yeah.
free. You don't need a teacher necessarily to teach you. And you can find books online, right? Which help you think about, give you problems that you can solve, right? If you need ideas for problems to solve. But it's all about like first principles thinking, right? Saying, okay, if I need to make this little dog cross the road, right? If that's the program that I'm trying to do, like, how do I ensure that I set my dog at the bottom of the, whatever space I need to set them at? How do I think about how many steps they move at a time, what they need to do in order to be able, it's all about algorithm, right? And, how do I think about, okay, if something happens, then my dog does this. Otherwise, my dog does something else. Things like that, right? Like kids start thinking about, I think that is something that's very useful. I don't know that the million coding classes that are available out there are truly encouraging this versus saying, hey, listen, this is the program. These are the steps you can use to solve it, which is very similar. So now you go ahead and solve. That shouldn't be the point of programming, right? The point of programming should be to help me think about things and bring it to life, right? Through the medium of the program.
हाँ, नहीं तो फिर इट इज सिमिलर टू जो हम
Correct.
लोग को रटा दिया जाता है
Correct.
जो मगिंग वाला सिस्टम है कि हाँ बस ये हो गया, ये तुम्हें आ गया प्रोग्राम, राइट? तो इट
Correct.
डजंट मेक
Correct.
सेंस। जो प्रॉब्लम
That
सॉल्विंग
doesn't
वाला
make
अप्रोच है
sense.
वो नहीं है इसमें।
nahi hai isme. So you need to make sure that you find, so lots of free resources available out there for this. Or if you want to find teachers, then you need to find teachers who are willing to let you do it this way, right? Versus saying, listen, these are the steps. Now you just ratify and do the steps and you're done.
ओके, सो अब ऑनलाइन क्लासेस हो रहे हैं तो चाहे वो स्कूल से हो रहे हों या फिर देयर आर मल्टीपल ऑनलाइन क्लासेस,
Correct.
इवन लेसन लीप इज ऑनलाइन, तो देयर इज वन
Correct.
कंसर्न दैट एवरीवन हैज इज अबाउट इंक्रीज स्क्रीन टाइम, क्योंकि सब लोग अपने बच्चों को ज्यादा टीवी
Absolutely.
भी दिखाने लगे हैं। तो व्हाट डू यू थिंक अबाउट इट? कई लोगों को लगता है कि जैसे मुझे ही ले लो, तो मुझे भी लगता था कि आईज वीक हो जाती है, बट नाउ आई नो कि आईज वीक नहीं
Correct.
होती हैं, बट स्टिल देयर आर अ लॉट ऑफ कंसर्न्स। सो व्हाट डू यू हैव टू से
Yes.
अबाउट दैट?
So, I mean, I used to be one of these same parents, right? And who used to believe screen time is really bad and avoided it as much as possible. Things like that. I think I've changed my view over the last couple of years to say not all screen time should be tarnished with the same brush, right? And not all screen time is bad. And you have to have a mix of screen time and non-screen time, right? It's also definitely, it's not a good idea to be on the screen from like, 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night without a break. Absolutely not advocating for that. But there is active screen time and passive screen time, right? So passive screen time is, when you see little children just sitting in front of the TV and staring, right? And just like, it's like they're, I don't know, hypnotized. They're just like staring. They won't hear you when you call them. It's not like they're actively participating, right? It's almost like they're just sitting there hypnotized, which is a scary form of screen time, which I think should be as limited as possible. But then there's also very active screen time, but there's a lot of interactivity going on, right? Which could be, school classes, which could be other classes like the ones. So our classes are never just the teacher chatting and the children sitting and staring at the screen, right? It's only completely interactive. And that to me is a better form of screen time and a way of taking advantage of technology to have experiences we could not otherwise have, right? At the same time, just ensuring that, even with my own children, they do about 4 hours of school, they do maybe one class a day, after that online, not much, right? It's not like we're filling the rest of their hours with classes online. And then hopefully in the near future, children will go back to physical school. So then the only thing they're doing is 1 or 2 hours a week of classes online, right? So, we're living in strange times, but also then making sure that, they're doing a plenty of non-screen, like Lego is a big hit in my house. Board games are a big hit in my house, right? Like the kids are also constantly doing other things. So I think trying to remove passive screen time away, encourage active screen time, but add into the mix a lot of, other non-screen activities. I think that's a good mix of screen and non-screen.
Yeah, yeah, that should be done. So, Anusha, we talked briefly about Lesson Leap. We would like
Yeah.
to know a bit more, like what all courses do you offer, and where can we find more information about them?
So at Lesson Leap, we offer different types of courses currently focused on communication skills and improving communication. So we have a series of courses that are focused on verbal communication. So these include theater, debate, public speaking, storytelling, right? Like different forms of different ways in which you can improve your spoken verbal communication.
Mhm.
Our courses are divided also based on age group, right? Because we don't want to have a class which has, a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old together, right? That doesn't work. Different
Mhm.
children have different, abilities. And so the way we break them up is you have sort of senior KG, grade one kids together, then grades 2 and 3 together, and then grades 4, 5, and 6. Those are the sort of three age groups that we cater to. So we have spoken, and then we have written communication. So we have classes around writing stories, different forms of writing, right? Fantasy writing, fiction writing, like all sorts of different forms of writing. For the younger kids, it's a little bit more reading comprehension and then maybe drawing things out because they may not be able to write as yet, but the focus is very much on comprehension and writing. And then we also have visual communication skills as well. So, we have different forms of art activities, graphic design, things like that, that help children communicate better visually as well. All our classes are small groups, so between 4 and 6 children, depending on the class. A lot of our teachers are actually based outside of India. We think this is one of the amazing things, power of technology, right? The
Yeah.
teacher can be anywhere, the students can be anywhere. So, we get to access like the best teachers from across the world. So we have a bunch of really amazing teachers from across the world that do our classes. And typically they are between 45 minutes to an hour. For the younger
Mhm.
kids, we cap it at 45 minutes because it's not easy for them to sit through for an hour. For the older kids, most classes end up at an hour. And most of these programs are between 4 to 6 weeks in length. And the minute you finish one program, we have the next program lined up for you, right? So you could
Mhm.
do a whole year with us of different blocks of programs, which are about 4 to 6 weeks in length.
Okay, very interesting. So, where can we find out more about
Yes.
your programs?
So if you go to lessonleap.com, that's our website and it gives you more information.
Okay, wonderful. So do check out lessonleap.com, and I will leave the link in the show notes and also in the description. And Anusha, thank you so much for sharing what you have shared with us. You have shared some resources, you have shared some wonderful ideas, which will definitely help our kids. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Maitri.
So thank you so much for listening to this episode of Little Fixes podcast. And I'm sure कि आपको इससे कुछ नया पता चला होगा, आपको कुछ आइडिया आया होगा कि आप अपने बच्चों को और कैसे डेवलप कर सकते हैं, किस तरफ उनका इंटरेस्ट है, ये पता करके उनको और क्या चीजें सिखा सकते हैं. तो अगर आपको लगता है कि इस एपिसोड से आपकी हेल्प हुई है या फिर किसी और की हेल्प हो सकती है, तो डू गिव us a shout out on social media. You can tag us at Little Fixes Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. साथ ही you can subscribe us on Apple Podcast and you can also rate and review us there. बाकी आप हमें किसी भी म्यूजिक ऐप पे, किसी भी पॉडकास्ट प्लेटफॉर्म पे, अलेक्सा पे सुन सकते हैं. So, अब मिलते हैं नेक्स्ट वेडनेसडे. तब तक के लिए लाइफ में मजे करो और सदा सैसी रहो. बाय.